There are two reports that we're dealing with here, one from the University of Toronto, one from the University of Cambridge. And it all began after officials within the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama complained that they feared there had been a breach of their email system and their computing system. The report from Cambridge University deals specifically with the concerns coming from the office of the Dalai Lama, because last year they became suspicious, saying, quote, they sent an email invitation on behalf of His Holiness to a foreign diplomat, but before they could follow it up with a courtesy telephone call, the diplomat's office was contacted by the Chinese government and warned not to go ahead with the meeting. Nowhere in the report do they in fact name which diplomat that was, who was in fact contacted by the Chinese government. That then leads us to the bigger study, which was conducted by the University of Toronto. As you say, there are claims that almost 1,300 computers were infiltrated, 1,295 to be precise, in 103 countries. Up to 30% were considered to be high-value targets. And while the source of these attacks came from China, this report does state quite categorically, but attributing all Chinese malware to deliberate or targeted intelligence gathering operations by the Chinese state, in other words, the government, is wrong and misleading. Now, the reason for that, again, it is contained within this report, is quite simply the high number of Chinese internet users here, and also the fact that they're young and they're savvy. Last count, 295 million internet users in China, almost the same number as the entire population of the United States. And this report does say that these young users are in fact very patriotic, they're very savvy, they know what they're doing, they're very much, there is a culture here within the young internet users of being able to use these kinds of cyber espionage tactics to breach computers. It's very easy to get information on the internet, especially for these Chinese users, to try and attack these sites. Now, over the weekend, CNN has been trying to contact officials here from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to get their comment on all of this. We have not been able to reach anybody. However, it has been reported that other officials have spoken to media outlets like the Guardian newspaper, the New York Times, and in each of those instances, these officials have denied these reports describing these claims, especially of Chinese government involvement, as being nonsense. Christy?
Now, can you tell us more about the nuts and bolts of all this? What was the intent of this cybercrime ring? What were they out to accomplish?
Well, once again, that isn't exactly clear, but what we have learned from this report is that this does appear to have been a very sophisticated cyber espionage attack. Not only did it infiltrate email, being able to intercept and resend email, but also this malware or spyware could actually take control of a computer, activating cameras and recording devices. So it was very sophisticated without the user even knowing that it had in fact been hit by this kind of program, Christy.
And has there been any comment from the Chinese government or state media to this report?
Yeah. This is interesting. Once we said, like we said, there's been just a few comments from a couple of officials over the weekend, nothing that CNN has been able to get from the actual government itself. But what we're expecting, though, in a couple of hours will be a fairly standard denial. When we've asked about these kind of stories, these reports in the past, it's always been completely denied by the officials at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In fact, they say this kind of thinking is just Cold War thinking. And then they leave it pretty much at arm's length. But what we've noticed in the past is that then the state media kicks in with a fairly concerted campaign trying to discredit those who have made these allegations in the past. Whether or not that happens now, we'll have to wait and see. What is also interesting, though, is we've been looking at the blogs this morning to see if there's been any comment there within China by the Chinese bloggers. There are a few reports, but mostly just translations of the article which appeared in the Guardian, the New York Times, and various other newspapers. Not a lot of comment yet. So whether or not that changes today, whether or not they get the green light, if you like, to go ahead and start criticizing this report or commenting on this report, will be an indication of how the government sees this report coming out of these universities, both out of Cambridge and Toronto University.